Okay, our next video series is prepping for cutting all of these 3.5-inch strips to cut 3.5-inch squares. So after you press your fabric, you'll find that your edges are not necessarily square here, but you do have a nice clean edge on the bottom. So you'll take any line on your ruler and put it along the fold that's nice and clean. Make sure that that's lined up and that you have all of your fabric exposed. I'm getting it kind of close there, so I'm actually going to scoot over a little bit more. And then pressing firmly on the ruler, not using the handle, I'm going to cut nice and firmly the entire length of my fabric. Before I move the ruler, I make sure I have a clean cut. Now that I have a good clean edge, that is the edge that I'm going to measure off of and cut my 3.5-inch strips. So I'm going to flip the whole thing over. I am, of course, right-handed, so that is why I'm doing it from this angle. You'll see that I am on an angle on my mat because I am not measuring off of my mat, and this keeps me from wearing grooves in my mat on my measurement lines. I'm going to find what I'm cutting with because now I'm measuring off of the ruler. I need, for the quilt I'm working on, 3.5-inch strips. So if I turn here for this Creative Grids, I can use my black marks that say 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. And if I have that 3.5 line going along my straight edge and I follow the edge of the ruler, I will have a perfectly square 3.5-inch strip of fabric, as long as my ruler doesn't slip. So firmly and securely, if you have to, you can move your hand. That is why some people don't actually like those handles there. If you are going to put your hand by the handle, don't hold the handle. Still put your hand on the ruler. Perfect 3.5-inch strip. Then you can move the fabric if you need to and keep it right in front of you. You should be able to follow a square off the bottom if you need to. And you have your line here for 3.5 inches. Make sure it's square the whole length of your fabric. Okay. Your pattern will tell you how many 3.5-inch strips. After that, you need 3.5-inch squares. If you are a beginner, I would cut no more than 2 strips at a time. More than that, more than 4 pieces of fabric, and it has a tendency to want to shift on you. Okay? You really got to spend your time and make sure they're lined up. The more fabric you have, the harder it will be to keep lined up. The first thing you're going to do is square up that outer edge, same as before. And you do that by giving yourself a square edge along your flat edge of your cut strip, and then we're cutting all of our selvages off. Firm pressure on the ruler so it doesn't shift on you, and you can cut through all 4 layers of fabric at this time. We're going to flip our whole stack over, holding them together so they don't shift. You can check to make sure, but you don't want to mess with them too much. And then you're going to go 1, 2.5, 3.5. You can do this at any point on the ruler, but I prefer to continue to use my big ruler as opposed to going to a 3.5-inch square, and I'll show you why in a second. With my big ruler, I'm completely covered over this. Way less chance of it shifting on me. With a 3.5-inch ruler, you are only covering what you need cut. It is harder to get a clean start down here. You are more likely to nick your blade and nick your ruler, and it is easier to shift your ruler or have your fingertips fall off the edge and therefore clip your fingertips. So I prefer to use the larger ruler. You still have your 3.5-inch line. You can do firm pressure, completely covering your squares, and get a good clean cut. You'll just do this down the length of the strip until you have all your 3.5 inch from that, and then you'll proceed on to your next couple strips. Again, if you want to stack more than 4 at a time, there's a chance they're going to start to shift on you. If you're having trouble cutting, consider putting a sharper blade on your rotary cutter. Now, I'm at the end of my strip. I can get the fold of my fabric, so I'm going to do it like this. If I hadn't cut enough selvage off early on and I couldn't quite get the fold, I could open it up instead and cut. So there you have your 3.5 inch squares for your Besties Road Trip Sew Along quilt.